All right, thank you for your patience. Let's get started. This webinar is about working with date, time, data in Origin. My name is Ishwar Iyer. During the webinar, if you have questions, please use the Q&A and chat window to type your questions and comments. I'll monitor them, and a couple of my colleagues from tech support are also panelists. The project from this webinar, the data files, and the recording will all be available to you next week. So this is an overview. I would recommend that you sit back and watch what we are showing rather than try to do it the same time in your version of Origin. It may be more productive if you come back and look at the recording later and get the data files and the project and work with it. And when you have questions, tech support is always there to help. You're welcome to contact us and ask follow-up questions, not only just during the webinar, but also later when you start absorbing the material and working with your data and questions come up. Okay. I just wanted to start out by showing our website. If you go to the support menu on top, there is a webinar icon at the bottom, easy to find. If you click on that, you will see list of upcoming webinars. We show only 2 days here, somewhat misleading. So if you click view all, you will see a table where we have populated topics all the way through end of August. So every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. Eastern, we have a webinar. Okay. At least to end of August. And we have had good participation, quite a few registrations, so we'll keep going. We need your help though on topics. What topics would be of interest to you? Which topics we may need to repeat? What areas of Origin we need to focus on more, go in depth? So if you go back to this page, the main page that I got to from the training webinar icon, there is also a link to recorded webinars. So if you click on that, you will see recordings from all of our past webinars. Okay? So if you are interested in a particular topic, such as say how to create a user-defined fitting function, there was a webinar for that back earlier in July, and you can click play to play the recording and download the OPJ file. Okay? Also under support, if you go to support and help center, there are many resources for you. We try to put the key ones here together. There are many video tutorials in addition to webinar recordings. There is an Origin blog, a technical blog. There are FAQs, user forums where you can ask questions. In addition to emailing support, you can post there. Expert users may reply to you. We have apps for download, as you may already know. We have graph gallery, user case studies, and of course, webinars. Okay, let me switch back to Origin. So here's my agenda for today. I'll start with some very basic things. So I'm going to talk about date, time, data, things to watch out when you're manually entering data, copy paste from Excel, how to perform custom formatting of date and time data in a worksheet, how to format in a worksheet versus graph, how is the data internally represented in Origin, then several examples of importing from Excel, importing from CSV and text files, getting web data, okay. Then some examples of date time functions to extract, like say just the month or the day or the weekday from date data and use that for some analysis. Using filters on date time data, and finally fitting with date time data. And last but not the least, we'll conduct a poll, and we would really appreciate your feedback. Your feedback is very helpful for us to structure future webinars and pick new topics. Okay? All right, let's get started. And during the webinar, please feel free to make comments and ask questions, okay? So let's say you have some data in a lab notebook, you did some measurements on multiple days and you have some numbers and you want to enter that into Origin to make a graph or do some analysis. So here I have a default worksheet. I have just used the control key to zoom in and out. If you do not know that, if you hold control, you can zoom in and out of a sheet to make the font bigger. Okay. So I'm going to just start entering the data. 1/1/2020. Okay. 1/5/2020. 1/15/2020. Sorry. 1/20/2020 and 1/30/2020. Note that my dates are not evenly spaced. I did that purposefully. I'll show you why. Okay. So you may look at this and say, everything looks good. Let me make a graph. So if you click on column B and go to the plot menu and let me choose a line and symbol graph, you'll notice that the points are evenly spaced. So what Origin is doing is looking at the X column and it does not understand yet that this is date. So it's just using text labels at position 1, position 2, position 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So the key is when you work with date and time data, you need to be sure to tell Origin that your format is indeed date. We will later see examples. When you import, it gets taken care of automatically in almost all cases. So to specify that this is a date column, you double click on the column header to open the column properties dialog. Okay, there are several things here, one of them being the format. So Origin columns by default are text and numeric, so they can have a mixture of numbers and text. And that works well for most data that you would import, that's just numbers and text. So now it's date, so I need to change that to date. Okay. One telltale sign that it's not yet a date is that it's left aligned. Text in a column is by default left aligned. So if it's left aligned, it's not yet recognized as date. So let me change the format to date. And for display, there are several formats for displaying. I'll come back to that a little bit later. Let me just click apply button. And you'll see that the information in column A is now right aligned. Okay. So that now tells that Origin has accepted this as a date column. Everything entered there is a valid date. So now it is date versus some data. So now if I go click on column B and do the same plot again, okay, you'll see that it's quite different, right? It's no longer uniformly spaced. And here I have my labels on the axis. The labels are not necessarily where the points are. I'll come back later to how to customize date labels in a graph in a later topic. Okay, so the key is to remember that you have to set it as date. You can, of course, start by setting as date. So once you set as date, then you can start entering your date text, for example, 2/1/2020. And when you hit enter, it'll immediately move to the right. It was accepted as a date. Okay. Same thing with time. Let's say you have some time measurements in a lab notebook and you want to enter that data manually. Okay. So this time, I'm going to just double click on the column and first set it as time. Okay. So I can go in here and again change my text and numeric to time. Note that there are many formats here: numeric, text, time, date, month, day of the week, text and numeric. Text and numeric is the default. So date, by the way, can be both date and time. Time is purely time. We'll see examples of this as we go along, more examples. So let me set it to time, and I happen to have hours, minutes, and seconds. So I can, from this drop down, choose one of the entries. On your PC, it may look a little different. Whatever is in the operating system or your version of Origin, the list may look a little different. Okay, but all the default entries, typical entries would be there. Also, there is an option for custom display, which I will get into soon. Okay, let me just choose hours, minutes, and seconds and click OK. Now I can start entering my time data. I don't have to enter all the digits. I can type 0:0:0:0, and Origin will change it to 00:00:00 because my format, if you remember, was HHMMSS. Okay. So let me enter the rest of the data. Okay, at least some of the point. Okay. So you get the idea. So now if I put in 2, 4, 6, doesn't matter. And then I make a plot similar to before. I go make a line and symbol plot. Now this is time data. Okay. This time now is not showing full resolution. We'll come back to a later topic on how to customize. Okay. So mainly I wanted to focus on data entry in case you're typing data from somewhere. Need to be aware that either after entering the data, change the column or set the column to be your desired date or time and then enter the data. Okay. Any questions, please feel free to type in the Q&A window or chat window. Moving on, how about bringing in data from Excel? Okay. So I'm going to go to Excel. I have some data entered here. By the way, in Excel, if you enter date or time, it automatically recognizes it as date or time and sets the format. Origin doesn't do that yet, okay? So that's why you need to be aware of the setting the columns. So let me just grab this and do a copy, Control-C, copy paste. Our users often do copy paste into Origin from Excel. So let me just show you some of the pitfalls when you do that. I'm going to do a Control-V here. You'll notice a couple of things. One is that the date was automatically recognized, okay, because it's right aligned, but the time wasn't, okay. In current version and previous versions of Origin, it comes in a very funky format. Okay, that just has to do with the internal format of how Excel stores data, time data. Let me just set the first column to be long name so that I promote it up there and I only have data here. So if I double click here, this is still shown as text and numeric, probably because the first line that I had. But if I right click here and look at the format cells, you'll see that, oh, that also came in as text and numeric. I'm surprised. Let me try that again with just the data. Okay, let me go back to Excel and I'm going to leave out the labels and grab only the data. Okay, copy and come back to Origin and paste here. Okay, and if I double click, okay, so I was wrong. So essentially we do not detect when we copy paste. We do detect when we import. So just need to be aware of the difference. Often customers copy paste. I'll show you example of importing a bit later. So when you copy paste from Excel, always make sure that your column is set to your desired format, date for the first one. And if you don't know about this yet, in the column properties dialog, if you have it up, you can keep clicking next to go to the next column. And Origin keeps skipping to the next column. This way you don't have to close and open again. And now I come here and I set this as time. And I'm going to give this hours, minutes, and seconds at the format and click apply. Okay, now you will see that it correctly formatted as the same data that I have in Excel. Okay. So the bottom line, what I'm trying to say is, if you manually enter or copy paste from elsewhere, make sure that the formatting is set correctly. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. I see some of my colleagues are answering some of your questions. I will try to read them as well as we go along. So please keep the questions flowing. Okay, now let's get into some details about formatting. Okay, so I have put a link here to our documentation page on date time data. Let me just copy that And I'm going to go to the browser and paste it here just to open it so you can see. It's quite a detailed page with information on how you can format date and time. And Origin uses several letters for denoting month, day, year, hour, and so on. Okay. One thing to notice is that unlike many other places, this is one place where the letters are case sensitive. So for example, month has to be capital M. Minutes have to be small letter m. Okay. And there is a difference between small letter h and caps H. Caps H would be 24-hour clock and small letter h would be 12-hour clock. Okay. There is, of course, also a T for, or TT for flagging the time as AM or PM. So there are several options here. Okay, I'll show some of them. So this is a page that you may want to bookmark and you may want to revisit so that you are familiar with all the formatting. Origin ships with many examples as well. So let me walk through some of those. Okay, so here what I have done is I have a worksheet with a column of data in column A. Let me zoom in a little. Okay, and I have just set all of these other columns to be equal to A. So these are all exactly the same data. Okay, so this is 1/1/2020 times 0. This is 1/25/2020 times 7:31 a.m. and so forth. Okay, so let me click on each column and show you what I did. So if I double click on the first column, you will see that I have set it as date and the display was chosen from one of these options available pre-shipped or whatever is available on your system. Like I said, from one system to another, it may be a little different. Okay. For example, yours may not say July 31st. It's just a representative example. Yours might say August 8th. Okay. So it changes from one PC to another. I do not know why. Okay. If you go to the next column, you will see that from the display, rather than choose any of these pre-shipped ones, I chose custom display. That's where you can come in and you can type in a string. So just so you can see better, this dialog font is really tiny. I put the same string here in the comments so you can see what I have typed. So I had typed two places for month, dash DD, the day, dash YYYY, and then HH for hours in 0 to 24 format. So you see there's a 20 in here. Okay, then MM for minutes, SS for seconds, and period, pound, 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 which is a fractional seconds. Okay, so that's how it's showing here. Let me skip to the next one. Here you see I use the format HH, MM, SS, TT, and I left out the date. The date is still there in the internal data, but I decided to show only the time from the date part, okay? So what I'm trying to drive at is that the formatting of date time is very flexible. You can pick and choose what you want to show. For example, if all the measurements were done on the same day, even data happens to have the date in it, you may not want to show it. Okay, so you can just set it as time alone. And here I use the notation TT and the small letter HH. So now you see the hours go only from 0 to 12, but I have also denoted them, or is it AM or PM? So 20:01 is actually 8:01 PM. Okay. The last one is just another variation. I wanted to show the day of the week as an acronym. So if I use DDD, it shows WED. If I use MMM, it shows the month in 3 letters, JAN, FEB, and so forth. Okay, so just wanted to tell you it's very flexible. So here I can go make changes. So here I can say, oops, I forgot the second. So I can go put colon SS. Okay, then if I click apply, then the seconds would appear as well. Okay, all the data internally is there. This is just the display format. So it's a bit tricky. You need to realize that the display format can be biased. You may show only some part of the data, although internally all the data is there. Okay, it's just a matter of convenience and annotation and such. Okay. Okay. All right. So now let's get to how to take worksheet data, plot it in a graph, and format them separately. So Origin lets you handle formatting of date time in worksheet separate from graph. So here again, I have some data that I entered. Okay, I have some date time, and the measurement happens to be all on the same day, 1/1/2020, just different times, and I have some values here. Okay, and for the worksheet column here, I don't care. I just left it as one of the default formats. I care more about the graph. So let me see what I can do with the graph. So I'm going to choose this and again make a line and symbol plot so you can see clearly how many points there are. Okay. And by default, Origin might use some format for the graph axis title. Let me make this a little wider so you can clearly see. I'm going to click here and drag this layer to be bigger, wider. And in recent versions of Origin, we have these mini toolbars. So if I click outside of the page, there is a mini toolbar for setting fit page to layer. So that's basically saying fit the page to match the layer. Okay. You have the same thing also under the graph menu, fit page to layers and fit layers to page. Okay. Just makes it convenient in recent versions that you have it accessible as a mini toolbar. The mini toolbar has various purposes. Depending on where you click, it will pop up different buttons. We introduced this in the last 2 versions. Okay. We make this a little smaller here. Okay. So you see it's showing just the date, 1/1/20, 1/1/20, 1/1/20. So all my time information is lost, as in not displayed, but it's not gone. So let me just double click and open the Axis dialog. Okay, so in the Axis dialog, you will see there are several tabs here. So if I go to the tick labels tab, you'll see that the display understands its date and it's using by default one of the, I believe the first one. Yours may be different. Okay, I'm not sure if it'll always pick the first one, the same thing for everyone. But anyways, here's where you control it, just like we did it on the worksheet. So I can go here and pick any of the formats I want. But then I realized that everything involves date, right? And my date all happens to be the same date. So I don't really want the date part. I only want the time part. So I can go to custom display, just like we used custom display in the worksheet. I can come here and click. And custom display is usually populated with many entries. Some of these entries, I have a lot more because I have been playing with these entries to prepare for the webinar. When you look in Origin, you may not see these many, but as you keep adding them, you will see more and more. Okay, so I can go here and pick one of those that's only time, hours, minutes, seconds, TT. Okay, and if I apply that, you will see that the axis will change. So now it's showing me the actual time and also AM, right? So far, so good. Okay, so now my first data point happened to be at 00, and it was, the data was spaced at 15-minute intervals. So I can customize that too. Origin by default picks some start and end values, but here if I go click, I can customize. I can keep the date to be 1. Okay, you can tab or click in each field 1/1/2020, and I can say force it to start at 1/1/2020 000. Okay, so that will be my first label. Then Origin picked for some reason a really strange increment of 41 minutes. Okay, this I would say is touch and go. We pick some default. It may not work as a smooth number for every data set. So, but you have control. So I go here and I say, I want 30 minutes. Okay, you can put in 30 minutes, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, whatever your range of data is. Now, if I click apply, you will see that my graph indeed started at 12 a.m. Then 12:30 is the next tick. At 12:15, I have a data point. 1 a.m. is the next. At 12:45, I have a data point and such. So just showing you that you have full control, independent of the worksheet, on what you want to do with your graph. Okay, most often users may not care what the display in the worksheet shows. They care more about the graph that they're publishing. Okay, let me see. Let me take a moment to look at questions. Okay, there are no new questions. I'll keep going. If I'm going too fast, please tell me, I'll slow down. Okay. So far, so good. So we looked at formatting data in worksheet and graphs. Now let's talk a little bit about the internal representation of data. Okay, here I have another web page. This project will be given to you, so you can click on the link and simply open. Okay, I'm just copy pasting because when I click, it opens in IE. I just wanted it in Firefox or Chrome. Okay, so date and times in Origin. This describes internally our system, how the date is saved as a Julian date number and what's the first day in our calendar, which is slightly different from the definition of Excel or maybe other programs. For all practical purposes, you may never have to deal with the true internal number. But there are a few things that you may need to understand. So for that, I have taken a simple example. So here, again, I have a date and time, and my column B is set to be exactly equal to column A. But my column A is set as date, and column B is set as text and numeric. So you will see what column B is showing is actually the internal number, the way Origin stores this date and this time data. Okay, so these are large numbers. Okay, we'll come back later to trouble with such large numbers if you are trying to fit data that is based on date and time in X. Okay, so, and in the third column, I put in a formula. You may already be familiar with this f of x row in Origin, where you can type in formula. Okay, in the next version, we are also going to introduce a formula bar similar to Excel. So it will be easier for you to see the formula in larger font and type it, and the formula bar will appear right below the toolbar, similar to how it is in Excel. And that would be in version 2021 coming out in October. Okay, so here I put in an equation, a formula a minus int of a. So I'm taking the values in A, the internal Julian date values, and subtracting the integer part. So then, after subtracting, I set it as time. So you see that I used hours, minutes, and seconds. And the last column, I set it as numeric to be equal to this, so you can see. So what you will notice is that the fractional part of the date time is exactly what the time values are. So the time values never go above 0.9999. Okay, so if I do a minus int of a, I can recover time from date time. Okay, this may be useful when you're working with date time data. Get rid of the date. I'll show example of fitting date time data by removing the date offset. Okay, so just so you understand, internally the Julian representation for date and time are large numbers. The integer part is the date part, the fractional part is the time part, and you can separate them using simple formula to create new columns and then do your processing on the computed columns. Any questions on that? I'm not really dwelling into all the differences between Origin Julian, start date, and Excel and such. If you're interested, you can read that web page that I showed you. Okay. All right. So let's move on to importing. So now I'm going to take this Excel file that we had trouble with. Remember, we were trying to bring in the data copy paste and things didn't work well. I have saved this file. Let me just hit the save button again. And I'm going to just import it into Origin. Okay, let's see if that does better. Okay, so in recent versions of Origin, we have added a new menu called the data menu. Okay, and you can import from a file. These are all the old imports. Okay, there is Excel in there as well. If you see, there is CSV, there are many other formats. But in the recent versions, in the last few versions, we have also introduced connect to file. This is similar to in Excel, how you can connect to a disk file or connect to a web file. The benefit here is that the open project remains associated, tied with that file. And if that file changes, you can later easily re-import. There are several benefits to using the data connector. Okay, we had a webinar. We have had multiple webinars on data connectors. You can go back and look at the recording page that I showed you and review some of those. So I'm going to use the Excel data connector. So if you have a much older version of Origin, you will not have these tools. I'm just demonstrating the new way. Okay, you can of course import Excel files using the old way as well under from import files menu. So let me fire up the Excel data connector under connect to files. And I'm just going to navigate and pick that file from my folder. That's the name that I gave it. Click OK. A dialog pops up. You can customize it. There are header lines and such. I don't really have header lines, but I have column labels. My first row is the long name. So I simply click OK and the data come in. Now you notice that it's much better with importing. Let me double click and show you. The first column came in correctly as date. The next one is text and numeric. Third one is a blank column. Fourth one came in correctly as time. And the last one is a text and numeric column. So importing is better than copy paste. Because when importing, our code actually looks through. Somebody's asking, will fraction of a also work? Yes, I believe. Yeah, you can use fraction of a instead of a minus int of a. There are multiple functions in Origin. I'll come back to showing some of the datetime functions to you in a later topic. Okay, so Excel import is much better. Okay, now the data connector has this icon. If you click on it, there are several options. You can examine the data source. You can change it to another file. You can click here to import anytime. You can import all books that have data connectors. You can disconnect or remove the connector. There is also the option of exclude imported when saving. If I check this, what would happen is when I save the project, it will wipe out the imported data, but maintain a connection with the file. And then later when I open the project, I can re-import. That is useful if the data is very large. If the data is small size, Origin by default unchecks this. You can set the threshold. There are system variables for setting where is your threshold for deciding to clear or not. So I recommend if you're interested in all of that, review the recording from the data connector webinar. Okay, now let me go back to Excel and just grab this and extend it a bit. Just wanted to show you the data connector feature of re-importing. So I'm going to extend that. I'm going to take this. By the way, Origin can also extend data like this if you grab and drag, okay? Similar to Excel. I'm going to save this again. So the file is saved. Now, if I come to Origin, you will see that Origin already detected the timestamp on the file has changed, and this icon has become yellow. So I can click here and choose import, or I can go here. There is a button in recent versions to import all connected data. Let me just do just this one book. Okay, so you see the new data came in. So if you are for some reason maintaining your data in Excel file as a log because you need to share the Excel file with your colleagues, your lab mates, you can simply connect to that file. If you add more data to it, just come to Origin and click this and do re-import to bring in the latest data. Okay, let's look at some text files. I'm going to now look at a custom date time CSV file first. Okay, so if I go here, I have a custom date time file. Let me right click on it and simply open it in Notepad. Much easier to just view in Notepad. So you will see here it has a quirky format. date dot month dot year space yada yada comma and data, right? Let's try to import this into Origin and see what happens. So I make this book active and I'm going to go to the data menu, and we have data connectors also for text and CSV. You can also use the import, the old ASCII import. They are similar, but the text CSV data connectors have some recent improvements for dealing with some of the CSV formatting. Okay, so let me bring in the custom date time CSV file. Okay, and I don't have any column names or anything. I'll just bring it in. Okay, and let me expand this, and you will see the telltale sign that this is a format that Origin failed to recognize because it's not a standard date format. I deliberately chose something to show you what happens if, in case your instrument has a quirky format and it comes in like this, what do you do? And again, just repeating essentially what I did earlier, I just have to set my string. My string is dd.mm.yyyy space hh colon mm colon ss dot pound pound. Okay, so I copy this, I double click here, okay, and then I can go here and change my text and numeric to date. And then from here, I choose custom and I simply copy this and enter. And keep in mind, if you set this and send it to your colleague, they will see it the same way too. They will not see the entry in their custom display dropdown, but it's baked into the project. It will be date time for your colleague too, even though they don't have the string in their dropdown. And for you, the string will be there next time for you to pick from. Okay, so now it's right aligned. It is date. So now I can go plot my data. Okay, so this just happens to be some quirky data. There is a gap in the measurement from one day to another, and then another burst of data and a third burst of data. Okay, so just to show you, if you have some quirky instrument file, you can set your own format to match that instrument's format. Another example I wanted to show is IRIG time format. This was asked for many times, many years ago, and we introduced that in Origin. So let me first open the file in Notepad again. I have a file called IRIG time. It just happens to be a simple ASCII file. Open with Notepad, click OK. So IRIG time format is used when measurement spills over multiple days and you don't really care about the date. You only care about, is it day 1? Is it day 2? Is it day 3? Okay. So here it happens to be day 125 and the time and the value. And then it goes on, and then it goes into, I believe, a few days, 126, okay, 125 and 126, okay. This is a slice of data from day 125 through day 126. So let's try to bring that into Origin. So with this worksheet active, again, go to data, connect to file, text CSV, and I choose IRIG, okay, and click OK, and you'll see that it doesn't look right, correct? So you double click, Origin did not auto recognize the IRIG format, but we have IRIG formats in the dropdown. So right here, I have DDHH, DDDHH, MMSS. So if I choose that and click apply, you'll see it now correctly shows day 125, hour 23, 55, 16, and so forth, and all the way through to the day 126 data. Okay. So those of you who work with the IRIG time format, keep in mind that we do support it. Okay, moving on. Web data. I'm going to show you some examples of bringing data from the web. Okay, so I'm going to choose COVID data, and I'm going to show you JSON format and CSV. Okay, I already have the links here. This is from the COVID tracking project, covidtracking.com. I'm just going to copy this link. And if I choose a blank worksheet and go to the data menu, we have connect to web. Okay, you saw connect to file earlier, we have connect to web. This is similar to Excel. And if you try the Excel's connect to web and Origins, I believe Origins is much easier to work with for typical science engineering data. Okay, so I paste my URL here. I don't really need to say what type it is. Origin can auto detect, particularly because this has the JSON extension. Origin examines the format as well. There are many advanced options here and such. I'm not going to go into the details of this. There was a webinar exactly about connecting to web files by my colleague Chris Drozdowski a few weeks ago. So you can go and look at the recording. I'm going to just click OK, and the JSON data browser opens. The first element in this is a date, and you will notice that it's a quirky date. Okay, COVID project uses YYYYMMDD. Okay, just notice that. I'm going to double click on the root level to bring in all the data, so that gets entered here, and I click OK, and the data comes in, and you will see that it did not quite recognize the date format. Okay, I can fix it. Double click, again go here, set to date, and in my case it's a custom format. I set to custom display, and like I showed you from the browse dialog, is year, month. Remember, it's case sensitive, small m is minute, capital M is month. I often have messed that up myself, so need to remember that this dialog box, it is case sensitive. Okay, so now if I click OK, you will see that it converted properly, 2020 0730. So this is the data from yesterday, this is from the day before, and so forth. Okay, the same project provides the same data as a CSV. So let me show you connecting to CSV. So go to data, connect to web, and connect to CSV. And in the case of CSV, we were able to auto detect and bring it in correctly. So just showing you that even different import routines within Origin may have slight variations on whether they are successful in catching a particular date format that's non-standard or not. Okay, but the onus is on you. Always check to make sure that your column is set to the appropriate format, so you don't misinterpret your data as something numeric instead of date. Okay, all right. So then let's move on to show some date time functions. First, I have a very trivial example. Sometimes when you bring in your data, it might come in as two different columns for date and time. Let's say it is tab separated in your text file, and Origin decided to bring the first part as date and the second part as time. So here it's already set as column 1 is date and column 2 is set as time, two separate entities. So I want to combine them because my date does change, and I want to incorporate the date also when plotting the data. So how to do that? So if I just insert a column here, I can come here and simply type A plus B. Just add the time to the date. So you will see now the fractional part has some value, which is the time value. Then I can double click here, and I can customize it and say this is indeed date. And then I can choose one of my favorite formats that I used before, whatever I want to choose. Hours and minutes. This happens to be only hours and minutes. So you'll see now the combined data in column C is now both date and time. Then I can set this as my X column and then go to my Y column and make my plot. Okay, so now I'll have both date, the appropriate date here. Of course, as you know, you can customize all of this, the graph independent of the worksheet. I showed you that before, so I'm not going to spend time customizing this graph. Just wanted to point out you can add date and time simply by adding the two columns once they are set in the proper format. Okay, let's move to a little bit more complex example. I have here some date time data, okay, over several days and several months, and there are multiple measurements on the same day, like 5/1/2020, for example, and I want to do a box plot of the variation of the data over those days. And I want to do it a few ways. First, I want to see, is there variation from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday and such? So I want to put in a function here to extract from this date the day of the week. Okay, I put a annotation here, day of the week. Let's see how to do that. So I need to open the set column values dialog for this. So there are multiple ways to do that. I can right click and choose set column values, or if I'm already inside the FFX, I believe I can double click. No, not double click. I can right click. If I have selected it, simply selected it, I can right click and say open dialog, or I can hit Control Q. There are different ways to bring up the same dialog. Just wanted to make you aware. Let me just open the dialog. So the dialog opens and my active column here is column C, and I want to use a function based on column A and get the day of the week. So if I click on the function menu, you will see Origin ships with many functions for transforming data. We have over 300 functions, I believe, or maybe even more. I lost count. So one category is date and time. You will see many entries here. One of them is weekday name $. So there is weekday, which will give you a number 0 through 6. I want the name. So I click name, and it got inserted here, and it's waiting for me to say D, replace D with my desired column. D for data. My data is in column A. So the syntax is weekday name $, based on column A. And if I click apply, you will see now it populated Monday, Tuesday, and so forth. Okay. I want to do a different example here. Okay, a little bit more complex. Let me just copy it, and I'm just going to paste it. So I'm going to open the dialog, and then I'll explain. You can get the functions from the same dialog that I showed you. So I'm taking month name $, and I'm adding a space to it, and I'm choosing the day of the month, 1, 2, 3, 4, the day of the month, converting that to text so that I can combine everything. I can combine the month name and the space, my separator, whatever my literal separator needs to be, and the text version of my day. Okay. So now if I click apply, you'll see it's May 1, May 2, May 3, and such. So it's very flexible. Okay, to take functions like this and even morph them into text and combine different pieces of text and literal strings to build your own customized format for extracted data from your date. Okay. By the way, there is an FX button here. If you click that, a search dialog opens. So here you can type things like month, and then it will show you functions involving month, or I can type week. Okay, so easy way to find function. And if I double click, it will enter that in here, which is another way of entering the template for the function instead of using the function menu. In case you do not know where to look, the search dialog may be helpful. Okay, so now I have these. Let me show you how to make a box plot. Okay, I want to take this data and make a group box plot based on grouping here, using this column and then later using this column. So let me go to the plot menu, and I'm going to choose group under categorical plots. We have many entries here. We have been adding more and more plot types: Sankey, alluvial, parallel plot, cluster plot, and such. I'm choosing group plot indexed data, okay, because my indexing is in the column that I just created. Indexing means grouping. So I'm going to choose my data to be plotted is in column B. And my group column, first I want to do day of the week. Okay, you can see the moment I chose that, I can see a nice preview here. Okay, let me refresh this. My preview was hanging out of my monitor there. So you see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, variations in my data by day of the week. We have made so many improvements to box plots in recent versions, including violin plot and half violin plot, and you could play with all of these fill diamonds and interval plots and such. You can choose any particular format that you like and click OK. So now I have a graph of my data summarized by day of the week. Okay, let me go back here. This tool creates an output sheet. That's why you have a new sheet in the book. Let me go back to the raw data and plot again. I can go to the recently used icons, choose my recently used plot, and this time I choose data, And for my group column, I'm going to choose my customized month and day. And then you will see it's a different plot. Let me change this to say connect mean line. Or let's just choose mean bar with standard error and click OK. So now I have a plot here that goes by each day and month. And of course, I could make this work. So you can see the labels better. And again, do that trick of fitting the page to layer. We also have buttons for rotating labels now, so that's much easier. You don't have to go look at a dialog. You can simply rotate right on the graph. So mini toolbars are a new feature that may be very easy for you to make graph customization. So now you can see I use my customized extracted text information, May 1, May 2, May 3, etc. Okay. Sometimes when you import data from web, the time data may come in, date time may come in as Unix time. Okay. There is such a format. It's a very large number. Just wanted to point out that we have a function called Unix time that we introduced just in the last version. So here I am saying, get me the real date time from Unix time representation of column A and use of -5. This is data of traffic in New York during the month of March when everything was shut down. And this is live data versus historic data for the month of March. Okay, so the -5 is because New York is 5 hours behind the Unix standard time. Okay, so just to show you that there is also the flexibility of using Unix time. So now I can plot this data without selecting any column. I go choose a line plot and I can say use my new column as the X and plot both my traffic live and traffic historic. So I'm using, as you know, this dialog is very flexible. If you do not choose any columns, if you do not click on any columns, this plot setup dialog comes up and you can configure flexibly whichever column you want to use as X, whichever you want to use as Y, and so forth. So if I click OK, you will see here is the live traffic data and here is the historic data. And you can see there was quite a drop in the traffic flow in the month of March because of COVID. We have recordings of many more examples of working with COVID data if you're interested. My colleague Chris Drostowski also did a data processing webinar just earlier. He has a recording of that from before as well. And today's webinar, he'll be putting it up next week as well. So there are many, many tools for data processing and Origin that you may want to review those recordings if you're not familiar. Okay, couple more examples. Data filtering. I want to do a quick example of filtering data. So here I have made a data connector to a CSV file to COVID tracking project. This is the entire historic COVID data for all states. So when I saved the project, the data got cleared because it was a large data set. Remember what I said, that the data connector stays connected to the file, but the data can be cleared so that you can later import it. So let me click here and re-import the data. The data comes in. It actually goes to the website and fetches the file and brings in the latest data. So obviously, COVID project is 1 day behind. So my latest data is from 7:30. Today's data will be there only tomorrow. And there are many, many columns here. I've hidden some of them. And what I want to do is a pivot table based on the last 7 days of data. Okay, so here I have a date column, and Origin has worksheet filtering. My colleague Chris showed many examples of this in the webinar earlier today. I'm just going to do quickly a filter on the date column. I'm going to click this filter button, toolbar button here, and Origin adds a filter icon. And if I click on that icon, I can choose before, after, custom. There are many options. I want a between filter. So if I click that, just so you know, if I use numbers, a different dialog will come up. If I use text, a categorical dialog will come up. Because I'm using date, a dialog that allows me to browse a calendar comes up. So now I can go here and say, choose from 24th through 30th, 1 week of data. Okay, and click OK. Then the data gets reduced. Okay, and now there's data only for 1 week in there. Okay, okay, somehow that didn't work. Let me try again. Between filter 24th and July 30th, and click OK. I'm not sure why that's not reducing my data. It's still going to 2020 0124. Okay, let me try that again. Let me just enter here, 7/24 and 7/30. Click OK. Okay, I'm not sure what's, okay, it's reduced now between 7/24 and 7/30. Maybe selecting from the calendar has a problem. I have to follow up on that to see why it was sticky. It wasn't filtering. So now it's reduced to only the last 7 days. So now I can do a pivot table quickly just to show you the flexibility of working with such data and transforming it. So I'm going to open the pivot table dialog, and I'm going to say for the table row source, give me the states. Okay, let me move this dialog a little bit. Click here, and I want to do it based on, okay, my WebEx pop down is interfering with me, not letting me select easily. So I can go here and do select columns. Of course, I can just go select columns and bring up the dialog, and I want to choose state for my rows. Okay, click OK. And I'm going to do the pivot table column source to be the actual date. So again, I can go select columns and choose the date column. And I'm going to look at sum and then sum of select column. I'm going to look at death increase. Okay, let me find that column. So I'm going to look at death increase in various states as a function of date for the last 7 days. So once I choose that and click OK, I get a table. So this is showing 2020, 7/24, 25, 26 through 30. And you'll see the top states here, as you have been knowing in current news. Texas, Florida, California, Arizona, South Carolina are all seeing increased mortality in the last week or so. Okay, so mainly wanted to show you the flexibility of filtering date data and then doing processing on the filtered data. Okay, one last example and we'll stop. So here I have some date time data again. Here all my dates are the same, and I happen to have measurement as a function of time. Let me first plot it, okay, as a scatter plot and try to fit it. I want to fit an exponential growth function to this data. Okay, so we go to the analysis menu, fitting, nonlinear curve fit, open that dialog. Okay, and then I'm going to choose the exponential category and pick the exponential growth function. Okay, I have a single term exponential growth function x grow 1. Okay, and you will see Origin is failing miserably to fit that because the initialization has a big offset because of the date, right? So I can try a different function, x grow 1. Okay, so if I choose grow 1, I'll show you the formula. It has an offset parameter for the x value. And then things are looking slightly better. But if I try to fit, Origin still complains fit did not converge, mutual dependencies exist. If I go look at the parameters, you will see the x offset is a large Julian number. Error is missing value because it did not converge. So when you work with very large data with very large offset, which is typical with date time data, you can have difficulty fitting because the iterative procedure, the real variation in the data is washed out by the very large offset. So in this case, what we recommend is convert your data to just the time part. In this case, I did not need a date part. So I can come here and use the same I can use the frac function, fraction of A, and now I have the time. And then if I plot this, okay, I could set that to time as well. I just left it as raw data, doesn't matter. So now I can come in, I can go to the analysis menu and choose the fitting dialog again. And this time you will see if I choose the exponential category, I don't even need a function with an offset. I can just choose the exp grow 1, which is the formula does not have an offset parameter in it. Initialization is good. If I fit, the fitting is good. All the parameters and the errors are, everything is good because there is no large offset to deal with in the minimization. Okay, so just wanted to point that out because this has come up in support a few times. My colleague has brought up polling. We would really appreciate your feedback. It's important for us to know how we are doing in these webinars, what topics you would like to see in the future, whether, say, today's webinar, if there is some sub area that you want to see more in depth in a new webinar, this is the sort of feedback we are looking for. Okay, so please take a few moments and give your feedback. Much appreciated. Also be aware that all of the recordings are available on our website. We put it up in a few days. We need to get it from WebEx, clean it up and put it up. So that will be probably early sometime next week. So if you again go to training webinars, on that page, you will see the upcoming webinars and recordings from past webinars. We really appreciate all of you taking time to attend these webinars. We hope these are helpful to you and your feedback will help us in adding more webinars to calendars for the upcoming months. So thank you for your time today, and we hope to see you in a future webinar. I leave the event open so you can finish answering the poll. Feedback is much appreciated. Thank you.